name's Kelly. I'm here for a Thrifty Notion to share the first video in a very exciting series that we're going to be doing over the next few months, where we're going to be starting at the absolute basics and diving super deep into talking about how fabrics are made, various fiber contents, weave structures, how to identify the fiber content of an unknown fabric through things like burn testing and looking at the fabric and looking at the drape. And so we're going to dive really deep into talking about all the technical aspects of different fabrics and hopefully give you the knowledge so that when you're shopping for fabric online, shopping for clothes online, or even just like maybe shopping for fabric at a thrift store, you'll be able to identify it a lot more quickly and have more confidence in what you're buying. So today's video is going to be more laying the foundation for future videos to talk more in depth about things like fiber content and how fabrics are made. So today we're going to talk about how you go from fiber to fabric and introduce the different categories of fibers. So first things first, when I say fiber content, you probably know that what I'm referring to is something like cotton, wool, or polyester. That's going to be the fiber that produces the fabric. And to go from fiber to fabric, the process does vary a little bit depending on fiber content and what the source of the original fiber is, whether it be man-made or synthetic. But generally speaking, you have to take that fiber, spin it into yarn, and then that yarn gets woven into fabric. Depending on where you look at this information, there is sometimes a thread step referenced, and really what that refers to is just the initial step of spinning a thread, and then multiple threads get spun into a yarn. So when I say thread or yarn, I'm usually using those terms interchangeably, referring to the yarn that's used to weave or knit the fabric. So if you're not familiar with the process of spinning yarn, I will say we do have a really cool video where Liv spins her own yarn out of some fiber scraps and wool roving. It's a really fun video, and it's just a good one to turn on in the background and kind of chill out to, listen to while you're sewing, stuff like that. So I will link it in the cards and in the description box if you're interested in checking that out. But really, all you need to know about yarn at this point is that that is what the fiber is turned into before it can be woven or knitted into a fabric. There are exceptions to this because not all fabrics are woven or knitted, but that's something that we're going to talk about in the next video. So when we're looking at fiber content, the next thing I want you guys to know is that there are three main categories of fiber content. There are natural fibers, synthetic fibers, and man-made fibers. So natural fibers are going to refer to obviously the naturally occurring fibers in nature, and these come from various sources. So there are plant sources and animal sources. This category includes things like cotton, linen, hemp, silk, and various types of wool, whether that be like sheep's wool or something like mohair that comes from goats, and there's also rabbit, Angora fur as well. So there are various animal sources for different kinds of wool. So in a future video, we're going to dive into talking about each of these fiber types in a lot more depth and talk about the properties that you can expect from each fiber, because even though a lot of these come from very similar sources, there are going to be differences from fiber to fiber and different expectations that you can have for each of these fiber types. The next category of fabrics are the full synthetics, and these include polyester, nylon, acrylic, and spandex and latex. So generally speaking, spandex and latex are going to be just included as part of the fiber content. They're going to be mixed with some other fibers, but these are usually synthetic fibers and they add stretch to the fabric. While there are naturally occurring forms of latex, most of the forms used within the fabrics that you're going to be buying are synthetic forms, and so that's why they're part of this category. Generally speaking, when looking at synthetic fabrics, what we're talking about is something that is made from a petroleum-based product, which means it's essentially going to be plastic. The last category of fibers are a little bit tricky because they are often included when discussing synthetic fabrics, but they are not fully synthetic. So when I was studying textiles in the academic world, I generally saw them being separated out and being referred to as either man-made fibers or partial synthetics. So this category encompasses all of the regenerated cellulose fabrics, and what that means is that these fibers are produced through man-made, synthetic means. However, the initial input to this process is going to be cellulose-based material, which means that all of these fabrics are made out of plants. But instead of just taking the fiber from the plant and spinning it into yarn, we're breaking that fiber down chemically and then turning it into a new fiber. And this means that we're going to have a very smooth, very sleek thread that then gets turned into that yarn, and you're going to have a completely different end product than you would have if we were just essentially like breaking up the plants and then trying to spin that into yarn. So more broadly, these fabrics can all be referred to as types of rayon. However, you may not always see the term rayon used because there are some other terms that get into more specifics to how these fabrics are produced, and there are some brand names of rayon as well. So we will dive into talking about all the different names possible for different types of rayon fabric, and we'll also talk about the sustainability concerns involved with these fabrics and how some of them are produced through much more sustainable means. So learning about all of that could be super helpful if you're interested in shopping more sustainably and making sure that you're buying more sustainable types of rayon fabric. So before we end today, I want to introduce you guys to the concept of staple fibers versus filament fibers, because that will come up when we discuss all of the different fiber types in more detail. And filament fibers are going to be very long fibers, which means you're going to have a smoother fabric produced from these fibers due to the fact there aren't as many little end pieces sticking out of the yarn. And staple fibers just refer to the shorter fibers. So things like cotton and wool are going to be staple fibers because they are short. That's just how they grow from the animal or from the plant. They're going to be shorter fibers. And so you're going to have more little end pieces sticking out of the yarn, and you're going to have a more textured fabric. And filament fibers are going to be things like synthetic fibers and rayons, as well as silk, because of how silk is made by the silkworms. All right, you guys, that's all for today. I know these were kind of just more broad introductory concepts, but they're going to be super helpful when we dive into things in more depth in future videos. If you have any specific requests or specific questions for this series, feel free to leave them down below, shoot us an email. All of our information is always in the description box. I cannot wait to dive deeper into some of these topics. I am so excited. So I hope to see you guys back here next time, and happy sewing!